How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more and to listen to some of your fascinating stories. So thanks for being on is it a podcast or video cast, I guess, today? So why don't we start by introducing yourself, if that's okay?
Yep. Well, my name's Joanne and I am from Scotland, a little bit north of Edinburgh in Kirkcaldy. I am an English teacher at Intrepid English. And I have lived in China, South Korea, Japan, Poland, and Scotland, obviously.
where you
yes,
are now.
Where I am now. Yeah.
You've moved back to Scotland recently, haven't you?
I have.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. You've been teaching with us for a month and a half now, and already you've made a really great impact. So I'm really, really happy to have you here. So you mentioned a few different countries that you've lived in. Would you like to tell us a little bit about some of those countries?
Yes, I was in China for, I think, a total of about 6 years, on and off, not all in one big stint. And I was in Japan. In Japan, I wasn't teaching. I was traveling and I was a student. So on the other side of the classroom. And in Korea and Poland, I was teaching as well. Yeah.
And so how many of those languages can you speak, and to what degree?
I would say that I can, well, maybe I don't want to say. No, I can speak Chinese and Japanese. I was very bad at learning South Korean, which is quite funny because a lot of teachers go from China, Japan, and South Korea if you're in that part of the world. And most people, well, a lot of teachers say that Korean is easier because it has more of a form of alphabet. So it's easier to read. Not for me, but so yes. Yeah, Chinese is okay. Speaking and general life-wise, but I didn't really go to classes. So in comparison to Japanese, where I went to intensive language school. So writing and reading is much better in Japanese than Chinese, even though I wasn't there as long. Yeah.
Interesting. So very different approaches to language learning for each of those languages. I'm sure that helps you or informs your teaching style when you're teaching English as well, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. That I think especially how I learned Chinese, a lot of it was not focused on, okay, today I'm going to study this one point and really do it. It was more just trying and failing quite a lot.
Which is a valuable part of learning anything, I think. You need to be able to fail and willing to fail in order to move forward, I think. I always tell my students that. Having a bit of a sense of humour is so important when you're learning a language. Generally helps you to enjoy the process a lot more, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, not being afraid to make a mistake, or just how you deal with inevitable failure, as you will obviously make errors again and again.
Yeah. As long as you're learning from it and you try to. This is one of the reasons I recommend reviewing the things that students learn. It's really common for people to learn, but not review what they've learned. But then you miss the learning points. For example, if you've made a mistake, if you don't review it, then you might keep making that mistake. So reviewing is a very valuable part of learning, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So we've talked about your language learning. So let's talk about your teaching a little bit. What kinds of English lessons do you most like?
Well, I've worked a lot with younger students. I think my youngest student would probably have been around 2.5 years old. So I have definitely spent a lot of time in kindergarten or early years, elementary, some high school and adults, but definitely a lot of time with younger students. So I think for younger students especially, CLIL-based learning, so content and language integrated learning, is very useful for them, and it's enjoyable for both the student and the teacher, because you get to teach English through subjects or combine it with other things so that they see it not just as a class or a test, but as, you know, a kind of door to learn other things or different experiences in general. Yeah.
That's so handy for children to learn that way, isn't it? I think CLIL's really taking off in many places in the world now. And I think it's wonderful. Like, I sometimes, I mean, I guess in a way, unintentionally sometimes, a lot of our lessons can be CLIL in the way that we're discussing topics that range from, you know, I'm just thinking about this week alone, I've talked about medical English, I've talked about lots of different kinds of business English. You know, I've talked to students who deal with the impact of climate change, and you know, we often sort of work on certain issues and talk about solving problems, but we're doing it in English. So you know, that way students tend to, or at least my adult students tend to focus less on perfect English, and instead they're focused on solving the problem, or you know, performing the action somehow. It really helps with fluency, I find, in many ways. So is that true of such young kids as well?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, definitely, especially for fluency. I mean, in some schools that I worked at, there was different levels of how important English was in the classroom. So there would maybe be some of my students who half their time would be in English, having all different subjects in English, and then other students who would only have English in English. And yes, you would have some cases where students maybe didn't do as well as people expected in the exam, but if you went, you could have conversations. They were just much more able to explain things in different ways or get their points across and ultimately think in English rather than having to translate everything, or just having, this is the one answer and this is the only way that I can do this. And if it's not the one question I know, I don't know what to do. So yeah. And it makes them much more confident, I would say, from such an early age, because they don't have the same insecurities as adults. Children, I think, often are not as worried about making mistakes. We kind of learn that as we grow up, that it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, they try, they explore, they, you know, fall down, get right back up again. It's quite admirable, really. I see that in my niece. She's fearless, you know, in many, many ways. And sometimes I'm a bit more cautious than she is. Awesome. So you've talked a little bit about your teaching, your career in various countries, which I'd love to talk to you more about. Maybe we need a whole series, a whole podcast episode on that. But you're also someone with a lot of hobbies, aren't you? So would you like to talk a little bit about some of your passions?
Yep. I love traveling, yoga, and dance. So I have been dancing, I think, since I was around 3 years old. I went to the same dance school as my mum went to. Yeah.
Really?
So the dance teacher, I guess you could say she's very experienced with all her years of
Yeah.
experience. Um, yeah, so I did Highland dancing, which is traditional dancing for Scotland. It's not ceilidh dancing because it's not something that everyone participates in. So it would be more kind of what someone would watch, and only
Okay.
specific people who've learned it would do it. Whereas a ceilidh is kind of a party style dance that everyone
Yeah, everyone
participates
gets
in. Yeah.
involved. So I'm sure you're as at home with a ceilidh as you are with Highland dancing now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do like ceilidhs. Although I did when I was traveling in Japan, I went woofing, and the homestay family, one of her friends, did ceilidh dancing as a class, as a hobby. So one day I went. She was like, "Oh, you can take the day off and go and take part in this class because they would like to do it with someone from where it's from." So
Yeah.
I did, but I don't think I was very. They were probably very disappointed because I think we don't do obviously. Well, not obviously. In Scotland, you learn in PE classes or just by going out to ceilidhs and participating. But there was obviously a class and a teacher, and you can do it competitively, etc. So that's what they were doing. So they were probably maybe a little disappointed that we just
You weren't a competitive ceilidh dancer.
do it at parties where people are drinking or having fun. It's not so serious.
Yeah. Or weddings.
Yeah.
I remember my first ceilidh at a wedding. I was very intimidated, but the band tells you what to do,
Yeah.
so you just follow the instructions. But there were people falling over. There were dresses getting ripped, and it was quite a thing to see. But yeah, when I try and describe it to people, I'm like, it's just like a dance routine, except they're telling you what to do when you have to do it. So I think you needed a glass or two of wine in order
Feel comfortable
to really throw yourself in. Yeah. But it's a wonderful Scottish tradition, I think. Mm. Awesome. What's this woofing you were talking about, for anyone who's not familiar with this wonderful concept?
Yeah, so woofing is the worldwide organic farming, and it's a way that you can travel or extend travels and learn things. So if you're interested in farming, gardening, or any kind of skills like this, you can sign up and for a certain area, and you register, and then you look for host families. So I stayed with a host family in Japan and helped on their farm, which was really cool. Obviously, very different plants than in Scotland. So lots of things that I got to learn, and they were just really lovely.
Wow.
Yeah. And then,
what kind of farming was it, though? Like, can you describe that to me? What did you have to do there?
I mean, it depends on what you want to pick. So this farm was not a commercial farm. And it was only plants. I didn't really want to go to an animal farm because I wasn't. Yeah, I just didn't.
You weren't ready for that.
And I think with a commercial farm, obviously, then you're really working like it would be a job, probably very tiring. Where this situation was much more laid back. They had one plot of land that was used by a school, and the area that she helped the school when they couldn't come or anything like that. And then she had another plot of land that she worked with her friends, and it was more like a community area. And then she had a certain section that was her and her family's. So on that, we got to do just really different things like peanuts. Obviously, in Scotland, you can't just go and
No, you can't grow peanuts in Scotland. At least I haven't seen any.
Yeah. And rice. I remember we were on the rice field at near the wall, and I was cutting with a kama, and then I was cutting away, and then there was just a snake. And I was
Oh my god,
very surprised.
Yeah.
And then
Wow. What's a kama? A type of
a
knife?
type of knife. Yeah. There was one day that she asked us to pick blueberries, and then we took the blueberries in and gave them to a bakery in exchange for bread. And there was one day that the area had a vineyard, so they got all people from the area to come and help pick the grapes for that season and stuff. It was just, they were just really nice.
That sounds like just paradise. You get to really immerse yourself in the culture, but that culture is really like natural and community based. Oh wow, that sounds like a lovely experience. It's much nicer than my experience of similar thing. Anyway, I wasn't woofing. It was actually in Australia. This is when, in order to get a second year visa as a tourist, working visa, you had to work for 3 months in a remote area. Okay. So I did various different jobs. And a lot of people think, Australia, that's going to be really warm and lovely and, you're relaxed, just chilling. No, I was in a really cold vineyard, and it was before the grapes had grown. It was really cold, and we had to prune the vine leaves. So you have to cut back the bushes, basically, right back to the main sort of trunk. So there's a lot of cutting, which over the full day in the cold means your hands turn into claws. No, I was just like, oh God. It was really cold, and I was chopping one day, and bending down a lot. It's very hard on the back, and I felt something itching. Oh no! There. And I looked down, and it was a redback spider, which, if you don't know, they're poisonous. Oh, no. But it was only a little one, so it had bitten me, but because it was only a little one, I guess its teeth weren't very big yet. And it caused a lot of irritation, but I was fine, obviously. But yeah, I was just quite surprised to see a spider. Yeah, that's just chilling on my chest. Obviously, screamed quite loud. Oh yeah, I bet. But yeah. You've taught a lot of different kinds of students. One thing that really impressed me when we first met, Joanne, was that you've taught refugees in the past. Can you tell us a little about your experience of teaching refugees? Yeah, I've been volunteering with RefuNet for quite a while now. So I've had, I'm with my third student. So they pair tutors with refugees, and you teach online at a time that is obviously convenient to both. What you do varies from student to student to best meet their needs and help where they are in their current situation and goals. Yeah, wonderful. That's great. It's so important to be able to help refugees coming to the UK or elsewhere, because English really is used as a global language now, and it can really help them to communicate at what is going to be a very, very difficult time in their lives, of course. So we, for those who don't know, who are watching this, we are, I like to call us a purpose-led English school, because we try and do what we can to make a positive impact in the world. So we're always open to more collaborations. But currently we are helping out Refugee Action, SmartWorks and Centrepoint for youth homelessness. So those three charities are absolutely fundamentally important in society to help people living in the UK. And yeah, for anyone who wants to know more about that, we've got the links on our website and a story all about them on our website as well. So you'll be helping us out with that, won't you, Joanne?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. Okay, I always like to ask the teachers if they've got any advice that they'd like to give to their English students. So whether that be an English student that you have online now, or a refugee that you're volunteering with, or anyone really who's learning English who might be watching this. What kind of advice would you like to give to those students to help them along their journey?
I think something that's really important to remember is that as a teacher, really, I want you to make all of your mistakes with me, so that you can go outside of the classroom and you've already learned from them. It's really what we're here to do is to help you. So it's good if you make a mistake, because then I can help. It wouldn't, if you are no longer making any mistakes and I can no longer help you, then it's often a sign that maybe you don't need that kind of lesson anymore. So, and I think when you're in the class, or anywhere in life, feeling like you're making mistakes can be really difficult and frustrating, but that's why we go to school, or why we do anything. We have to overcome them to get to the next stage, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering, you just reminded me of a quote. I can't remember who said it though, but it was thinking it was Albert Einstein, but probably not, because every quote is attributed to Albert Einstein, isn't it? But it was success is your ability to go from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. I thought that was absolutely accurate and comforting in equal measure. So thank you for that lovely advice, Joanne. And thank you for joining me today. I've really appreciated hearing your story a bit more. And we'll be leaving some links underneath the episode for anyone who wants to check out more of any of the topics you spoke about today. So great. Anything you want to say before we finish?
No, just thank you for having me here today. And I'm looking forward to having more students at Intrepid English and helping more people learn English.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. All right. Thank you so much.